it's really remarkable how you can achieve anything in life. It's also remarkable how long it takes. I always thought an overnight success was literally overnight. And I don't want to tell you how many years ago I sat in the audience and thought, oh, one day I'll have a big company. And isn't that the great thing about business? You know, when you're doing $1 million a year, you think, oh, if I could get to 5 million. One day, if I could get to 5 million. I spoke at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and the biggest business in the room was 2 million. And I asked them, how do you define big? What's your dream? And they were like, 5 million. If I could get to 5 million in sales, and then you get to 5 million and you think, 10 million. If I could get to 10 million. And that's what I love about businesses, it never stops. I mean, our company this year will do close to 150 million, and we're really proud of that, and big pat on the back. But on a global scale with the people we compete with, we're insignificant. So we're like, 250. How do we get to 250? Let's go.
Yeah, but the CEOs of those other companies don't get invited to Dancing with the Stars.
That's true. You know, I always tell my customers, you know, it's interesting, Tony talked about a brand, and I find that as I talk to a lot of businesses, the ones on the smaller end of the spectrum are worse at marketing and tend to be worse at sales. Large to small or more successful than not, people that tend to be on this end of the spectrum aren't as sales or marketing driven. And I'm generalizing, but they tend to believe that the world will be the path to their door. You know, they tend to be the kind of people that say, as long as I build something great, people will find me. From my experience, I've learned that, you know, there's no such thing as genius in the darkness of the basement. The world does not beat a path to your door. There really is no such thing as a better mousetrap unless you're telling a customer you have a better mousetrap.
I mean, you've gone so far. Let's start at the very beginning because it's such a great story. You have such a great story. I'll open it by asking about the creation legend of Robert Herjavec and start with one word, Zbieg.
So, Eric, you know, the village I was raised in is called Zbieg, which is a Croatian word, which this is how nice a place it was. It actually is the Croatian word for flee. Because it was a small village that during the wars people would only come to if they were fleeing somewhere else. You know, it's an entire melodramatic story. I'm actually not a first generation immigrant. I actually came to Canada on a boat when I was 8 years old, and the boat was called, to make it even more Hollywoody and melodramatic, the boat was called Cristoforo Colombo. You know, in the whole 9 yards. My dad was in jail multiple times, and last time he got thrown in, he was told if he ever comes back, he's never coming back. And then he grabbed my mom and I, we crossed the border to Italy, one suitcase, landed on a dock. And my mom remembered she had a friend, and we took the train from Halifax to Toronto, lived in their basement for 18 months, and you know, here we are. And so one of the things, you know, people always say, oh, you're the nice shark and you're nice on the show. And I always say, well, you know, it's relative because the other guys are such jerks at times, right? But I am a nice guy until somebody starts complaining to me about how hard they have it. And I have to tell you, nothing pisses me off more than people that complain. Or people that have this feeling that life owes them something. And I kind of really learned that from my dad. I mean, my dad was this really proud guy, and he would say that he was a political prisoner. He wasn't. He was just a young guy. He liked to drink, and he would go to a bar in a communist country, drink a little too much, and say, "Screw communism!" And they throw him in jail. And you know, the normal person would kind of make that connection. Oh, if I stand up in a bar and say, "Screw communism," and go to jail, this isn't a good thing. My dad took it the other way. He was like, "I'll show them." And so the next time he stood up, he said even worse things about communism. Fundamentally, he was a really proud guy, and he hated the idea of building equity or building capital and having to share it with somebody who wasn't working as hard as he was. You know, the thing I learned from my dad is he was okay with having nothing. He was okay with working really hard. He was okay with getting knocked down in life, but he wasn't okay if he created something and was successful that somebody would take it away from him. And that's what he hated about communism. And what I took out of all that is, you know, when we came to Canada, just to get a job, he had to work in a factory and he swept floors and the whole 9 yards. And I'll never forget one time, because it was really hard for me. I grew up in this little village where my grandmother raised me, and I always liked to talk, and so I didn't have to work hard on the farm, and there was pigs and donkeys. It was, you know, it was pretty good as a small kid. And then I come to North America, and I get thrown into a classroom. I don't speak the language. I look funny. We're very poor. I never realized we were poor until I got here. I come home one day and I'm crying because the kids beat me up and they were mean to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody loves me. Why don't I have any friends? My life sucks. And I'm sitting there complaining to my mom, and my dad walks through the door and he's kind of listening, and he had literally just walked 2 miles from the bus stop after having worked 2 shifts in the factory. And he's listening to this. When I'm done complaining, he looks at me and he says, you know, life doesn't owe you anything. Never complain. All you owe is an opportunity. And in this country, you have an opportunity. And then he went to sleep so he could wake up the next day and work 2 more shifts. Right.
Pretty amazing.
So, you know, when you have that as your compass, it's really hard to complain. There are days, like everybody in this room, there are days where I see overbearing difficulty. There are days where I see more no than I see yes. There are days where I see harder things than I see opportunities, but it doesn't last that long. You know, it's not about eliminating that stuff out of your life. It's working through it and keeping going. Because it's really true, this is still the best country in the world to start a business. There is so much opportunity in the world today, especially with the internet, especially with the pace of change, especially with cloud computing.
Yes, that's right. And this is a period in which entrepreneurship is a golden profession to have. You get a lot of support. It's
the best job in the world to have. And you know, because of shows like Shark Tank, it's kind of become cool to be an entrepreneur, which is crazy when you think about it. I mean, look at the 5 of us. You couldn't have 5 weirder looking people. And in general, people think we're kind of cool. I mean, it just goes to show you how being an entrepreneur is really in the American psyche today.